All right, welcome back to the Vince Del Monte podcast. Today we are doing a live interview, as you can see, at Rachel Scheer's home. It's an honor to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. We've been friends for how long now?
Over 2 years. You spoke
2 years?
in
No, it's been longer than that.
Well, you spoke in Nashville. Yeah. It's been over 3 years probably.
Yeah, it's been a while. Was Nashville 2 years ago?
That was April 2022. Yeah, so we're coming on to 3 years that you spoke. So we would have,
I feel like I've known you forever.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, okay.
And this is the first time I've been invited to your house.
Maybe it's because of how much change that there's been since then.
Right, a lot of change. Yeah, but I think in terms of personal growth for both of us, I think the conversation for us is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very different than I think previous conversations we've had. Today we're talking about becoming a healed entrepreneur. I find like a lot of entrepreneurs are very hurt from traumas from the past. I would say 100% of society's hurt from traumas from the past. But speaking to entrepreneurs, it really bleeds into, how they do business, how they show up. And they say hurt people. And I think healed entrepreneurs can heal a lot of people. And I see that's what you're doing with your work. You're not just helping them heal their guts and their nervous systems and their physical, but you're starting to help them heal wounds because you've done a lot of work. I'm sure we're going to talk about. So I think we're going to talk a lot about, trying to figure out how to navigate the chase that this entrepreneurial world offers, which has got a lot of dopamine, and how to start living. How's that sound?
I love it.
Where should we start? So I'm really excited. So I think I just love to hear, what was the pivot point for you? I know you've been like very focused on like your own personal growth. You're in this gorgeous home. I don't know any 32-year-old girl who's got a beautiful home like this.
Shh, don't tell them my age.
I'm not. You put it on your Instagram.
I know, I'm just kidding.
You put it on your Instagram.
Right. He was like, wait.
Shoot. That was strike one. All right. And so I understand like you have the entrepreneurial blood. What was the pivot point to start looking more inwards and start to actually kind of just maybe shift? Maybe there's more to life, if you will, than just a pursuit. Share that like journey.
Yeah, I often talk a lot about my physical healing journey and what got me into the functional medicine space, almost having my entire large intestine removed. But I haven't talked a whole lot about my true burnout story and where I started to struggle with panic attacks.
Right. When did those happen?
This was about 2.5 years ago, I think. It was when I was living in California.
Oh, really?
At the time. I was in a relationship that was not the right fit for me. And I mean, my whole life was my work. It was my business. And I would push my body to very extreme levels, really trying to prove something. And I don't even know if it was to anybody else, but I was trying to prove something to myself in a lot of ways. And it was actually after I had just launched something called my gut health repair program. I had invested $50,000 to build this entire VSL out. And I had, put everything in to build this entire program. I had signed up 50 people for it. So it was a great success. My team flew in town and we were actually in, I forget the area in California, but we were at a beach for a retreat. And this should have been like a celebratory time. And I remember going to bed that night and I just had so much internal anxiety and pressure. And I went to bed that night and I had my first panic attack. And it was the scariest, most horrific thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. I thought that I was actually dying in that moment. I actually tried to run. I ran to the patio. I was in a hotel at the time. And thank goodness, I mean, my ex at the time was there and he was able to just say to me like, hey, you're not having a heart attack. Cause I was yelling, just call 911, call 911. I'm having a heart attack.
Wow.
I don't know what would have happened if I would have jumped off that ledge. I mean, I was trying to just run and escape as fast as I could. And I actually said goodbye in that moment too, because I truly thought I was dying. I don't know.
You said goodbye?
Yeah, I thought that was my
Wow.
death, literally in the moment, because I mean, if you've never experienced a panic attack before, now I can relate and empathize with people so deeply who have experienced it, but you don't know what's happening. Your entire body takes over. I thought I was having a panic attack, and it was this full moment of surrender. Here I go. And I actually remember at the moment thinking like, well, this is really dark,
Wow.
like really, really dark. And of course, as the night progressed and my body came out of this massive stress state that took over, I realized that, okay, I'm not going to die. But that for me was really my breaking point and one of the most pivotal moments where I can't say I stepped out of that and was like, I'm going to change everything. It took me a while to really integrate, and actually I had to do a lot of healing work around some of the PTSD that I developed from that event. But it was the moment of
That was the shift.
shifting a lot.
So that was the shift from like, you're in this proving yourself mode, trying to be more, do more, have more. You have a panic attack. You realize that you have to have a shift. I think a lot of entrepreneurs operate from this place of, I'll be enough when, everything is going to, be better when they hit a revenue goal, they have a certain amount of followers, they build the perfect business. You talk a lot about like self-trust. Like, what did the journey look like to like shift away from feeling like you had to prove yourself and to start trusting yourself that like you're gonna build this in a different way?
I think at the beginning, for me, it was this act of really betting on myself, right? I had yet to really create something with my life. And part of this was a bit of my own wounds and trauma. There was this internal belief system of, I don't think that I can, but I also think that I can. It was like this internal conflict. And so I don't think it was necessarily a negative thing when I talk about, I felt like I had something to prove, because I think a lot of us have this internal voice. We have this part of us that says, I want to see what I'm capable of.
Right.
I want to create something with my life. And I think that's what creates so many entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And it's actually a very beautiful thing. It's like we want to prove to ourselves that we can. And we want to create that confidence within. And that, for me, is what initially got me started in entrepreneurship, intertwined with the mission that I had to want to help and serve people. But to say, hey, was it 100% about, okay, I just want to change as many lives as possible? No, that was a big part of it. But I think the other part that most people don't talk about it also was about becoming the version of myself that I envisioned that I could become. I had something that I wanted to prove to myself. And I don't say that in a negative way, but I think this is where at a certain point, it can actually develop into be something that is negative and something where if we don't do the internal healing work, it can lead to burnout. It can lead to, a lot of issues in one's life.
So I love to hear how you deal with this, because I went through the same process. A bit of my story, and essentially, I think everyone is trying to get to this next level, but they're using what I call survival mechanisms, or it's an unsustainable fuel source. So for me, it was pressure. I was constantly creating pressure in my life to push me forward, and
where did that pressure come from?
I always felt behind.
Yeah.
Like I was literally, like when I was a runner in high school, I was a mid-packer. So I was good, but I wasn't great. I was a good runner. So I always literally in school, I was always behind, even though I, tried. Everything I did, I felt like I was behind. And I felt like the only way I could get ahead was I'd have to put myself in these circumstances where there was pressure. So like enter a show, put a bunch of money on the line. Do something that was against what other people said was possible. I didn't recognize it. I discovered this just like 2 years ago, but it was constantly putting myself in places where I would create pressure. And the therapist helped me shift my perspective from, what if you were to create a fuel source that was built from being proud of yourself and being proud of how far you've come, rather than how far away you are from where you want to be. And that really helped, because waking up every day and being grateful for like, wow, holy crap, I was like struggling in school, changed my perception. So now look where I am, wonder where. So it's like now operating from a place of more possibility rather than pressure. Like, wow, if I've come this far. And it was just a healthier way to kind of push myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess the question is, do you think that every person can start at that point though? Right.
Or do they have to experience the pain first or some form of loss before they shift?
I mean, right. I think for a lot of people, pain is a very powerful force. It's very motivating. We talked about this off air. It's often pain that causes somebody in their life to say, hey, I want to make this change. I want to create this, right? It's like, if you are to run a business, would you rather sell pain medication or would you rather sell vitamins?
From my experience,
most people would, right. Pain medicine sells more. Pain is very motivating.
Yeah, I think I can only speak on my behalf, and from a lot of the men I work with, most men need to lose something that they didn't expect they could lose, because I think a lot of men like to be in control, and they think that everything is in control until they lose something that they thought was theirs, and then they quickly realize, holy crap, I don't have control. It's very, very scary. And it's like you have to let go, and then you realize, like, what was I chasing that was worth losing what I just lost? And then they have a quick perspective shift and like realize, why did I ever pause? Why did I ever stop to think like, hey, things are really good. Why don't I protect this? Why don't we figure out how to like put a hedge around this and make sure that this stays before we try and just acquire more?
See, I don't think being motivated from a pain point is a bad thing. If you think about so many of the incredible things in this world that have been created, it's been created from pain.
Right.
I think it's more of a question is, when is it time to shift out of the pain and start to get to a point where we can operate from maybe just a place of more fulfillment or inspiration in our life. But I think for so many people, it is our wounds that often is what creates that motivation, right? We can think of fitness, health, any of that. I'm so unhappy with my physical body. I'm unconfident. That's what drives people to create the change.
Right.
For somebody maybe who feels behind, which if I were to even dig into that a bit more, there could be a belief system of, if I'm behind, that means I'm not good enough. And if I'm not good enough, that means I'm not worthy. And if I'm not worthy, right, we could go deeper. And so I think so many of us, we operate from this place of worthiness, the love piece intertwined. And so it drives us to want to prove something to ourselves, maybe other people too, but I think actually more often than not, we're trying to prove something to ourselves that we can create something, that we are worthy. And I think a big part of it is, we do, and it has nothing to do with your worth, but I do think confidence comes from proving things to ourselves, building it.
That's
I know
true.
For myself, I've created so much confidence in building the business, but where it became problematic is, all right, I built something, but I'm continuously operating still from my wounds. And so, for me, as I really think about the journey, I think it is part of the journey to begin in that pain, to begin to grow, and then to reach a point where you realize that, all right, now I can't continue to operate from this. And maybe for some people, that is where their health begins to suffer, their relationship begins to suffer.
Right.
I hope for other people, it doesn't have to get to that point. I just hope that somebody is able to get to the point in their life where they can maybe just start to pick up on things of, all right, I've been driving hard for a long time. I want to do some of this inner work, and I want to shift things a bit, and I want to create a new narrative, and I want to create from a different place. And I want to really redefine what freedom looks like for me and what success looks like for me. But I think for most of us, it takes the pain to want to do a lot of that inner work.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the question then. So the question now becomes, we're talking about like there's this thirst for more. How do you know when enough is enough? I think, and are we even allowed to talk about this as entrepreneurs? You know what I mean? I think there's a whole stigma around like, if God forbid you settle or you slow down because you're not maximizing your potential, you're not reaching as many people as you could possibly impact. I think we're all sold that, bigger business, bigger goals, bigger impact is like the way to go. But as we're discussing, that can be exhausting. So my question is, how do you balance ambition and contentment? Like obviously ambition is a good thing, right? God instilled that into us, and that's how Adam and Eve built created. They went out and they worked, right? That's what we were told to do. But there is a certain level of like, all right, where's the line?
Yeah.
How do you know that? Like, how do we define contentment? And how do we not confuse it with like getting lazy?
Yeah. I think it's going to be very individual to each person. And I would almost want to turn it around and ask that person the question of, whose path are you following? Are you following your own path, or are you following somebody else's?
Right.
Are you following your own definition of success? Or are you
Right.
following somebody else's definition of success?
Yep.
I think for a lot of us, we think it's our own definition of success. We think it's our own path, but actually it's us looking around
Right.
on what we think
Yep.
we need, on what success should look like. We see this path that's been already laid out for us on what we need, the American dream to have the bigger house, have everything,
Yep.
the whole Instagram highlight reel. And we think when we get to that point, we'll be happy. And this is why so many successful people get to that point. I know you can relate to the story, and you're like, I'm at the top, I have all of this. Shit, now what? And this is where so many people get incredibly depressed. They
Right.
get suicidal, because when you're on your way up, they're still, well, when I get there,
Right.
I get there. So there's a sense of hope. But for a lot of people, when they get there, it's oh wait.
So how do you know? So let me ask you just like personal question, for you, like what lines or radars or start to flash, like when do you pause and appreciate where you are rather than like, hey, you know what, we're in a good spot right now versus, you know what, we got work to, what signs are you looking for, even like within yourself, like your relationship with others? How do you know you're like, okay, we need to maybe use the steering wheel or the brakes,
Yeah.
and we can take our foot off the gas,
My level of fulfillment
Okay.
and joy that I experience in my life. And not saying that there's not times of grinding, put your
Yeah.
head down and just work. A lot of people may look at my life now and be like, oh my gosh, this woman has a multi-million-dollar business. She lives in a beautiful home, right? And I have a whole team where things are very automated, and I have the freedom, and I just traveled through Europe for 40 days straight, and I had the means to do that. And they'd be like, well, I'd like that. And I'm like, but what you don't see is from age 25 up until 31, I didn't have a life. I sacrificed a lot.
Right.
And I was very, very selfish at that point in my life. I was probably not the best partner I could have been.
Okay.
It was all just about blinders up, me, build this mission. And I sacrificed a lot. And I think oftentimes we don't consider what we have to sacrifice. And there is a trade-off. And, I built it all. And then I realized, like, I don't want to keep doing this anymore. I'm ready to start saying yes and living my life. And this was actually about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Where I just had this, it was right before we stepped into 2024.
Okay.
And I was exiting out of a relationship. And I said, I'm tired of putting my life on hold. And it was this conversation I had with myself. I'm tired of putting my life on hold. I'm ready to actually start living. I'm at the point where I can actually start enjoying this.
Okay.
And that's where I called 2024 my year of adventure. And I'm like, I'm going to travel. I'm going to go where I want to go. And I'm going to completely shift my values.
Okay.
And my top two values were going to be adventure and relationships. And I said, what would my life look like if relationships were one of my top values?
Okay.
And adventure. I was like, well, I'd be traveling. I'd be going wherever I want to go. And I would be nurturing and building up so many of my friendships. And by making those two things my values and actively leaning into it, 2024 was the best year of my entire life. I've had more fulfillment than I have ever had. I had more freedom. You know what? Profits went down a bit in my business.
I was going to ask you, what was your fear there? And was it worth it?
I mean, yeah, it was, how is my business going to be affected?
Yeah.
I am fortunate enough that I have built up systems and things in my business. I sacrificed a lot for it. I'm not going to hide that, where I didn't have the means to have that type of a life, where though I was able to still maintain. Was I as profitable as the year before? No. Did we still do very well? Did we still have a multi-million-dollar business? Yes. But it was the most fulfilling year. And for me, I was like, this is success. And this is really what I want to continue to have more of in my life.
Like, is this where you're at right now?
That's where I'm at right now. And
are you still in an adventure, adventure?
Somewhat. I mean,
or you see yourself going back and forth a bit, seasons kind of thing?
I mean, I'm a big mission, purpose woman.
You like the work.
I like the work.
Yeah.
I like the grind. And since I've done a lot of the healing work, it has shifted to be about proving something to myself. And now that much more about the mission. Now before, it was about the mission. It was about the purpose. And it was about me. Both of those can exist at the same time. And I think sometimes we don't allow both to exist. It was about serving people. It was about helping people. And it was about me and proving something. And there was ego built into a lot of it. Now where I'm at is I don't feel like I have anything to prove.
Yeah.
But I feel a sense of purpose to still want to help other people. So I continue to want to grow my business in different ways. Like I have now a new passion to want to help veterans. I love psychophysiology, actually, which is the whole mind-body connection. So you may see content I put out there about the nervous system and about healing and trauma and how that plays a role.
Yeah.
And I found that functional medicine can only really help on the physical side. And of course, it can impact the mind and the nervous system. But I want to create a process where I can actually help people with the nervous system side, where I can help them with the mind side, where I can help people with a more full spectrum healing. And for me, that's purpose. I feel called to do that, but I'm operating from a very different place because it's not about me.
Yeah. Let me ask you, when you're working with, you're doing business coaching or still?
No,
you're not doing it? No, none. Okay.
None.
Okay. I was going to say, well, let's just say then a girl came to you and she wants to build a business and, like you've already achieved, this is kind of a criticism I get. Like, Vince, this is nice, that you're telling me to have an element of peace and focus on profits, but like this wasn't your mindset when you acquired all the stuff that I want and why I hired you. So it sounds hypocritical. And I'm like, not at all. I'm teaching you how I would do it differently and do it better. But you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So if someone's asking you like, I want the house here, but now you're saying like the chill and you're doing adventure, but that's not how you got the house.
No.
So how would you reconcile that to somebody who's asking you for like, how would you navigate them?
I'd say get clear on what it is that you ultimately want. Make sure it's actually what you want, not what you think you should have in order to have that level of fulfillment or success. And then know what you're going to have to sacrifice for it. I mean, there's sacrifices in anything in life, right? When you say you want to even jump into being an entrepreneur, there's going to be sacrifices that you're going to have to make. So with what it is that you want to make based off of the level of it you want it to get to and how fast you want to get there, just be aware of what the sacrifices are. I sacrificed a ton. I did not have a life. I burned myself out. Hindsight, would I change it? I can't say I would.
It's hard to say because
it's
you
hard
had
to
a
say I
panic
would.
attack, but at the same time,
But I didn't have a family. I didn't have kids.
It's the thing that led to the shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So now moving through, let's talk about, we hear this term called self-love a lot, and I do think there's a lot of value to it. But at the same time, I know it's very hard for people because how do you love yourself when you hate yourself? You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't like where you're at in life, how do you love yourself? It's like a weird thing. I don't know if you've ever thought about it. I think about it, like, how do you love yourself when you hate yourself? I get what they're trying to say, but how is your business now more of a reflection of self-love?
I want to let's go back a minute though,
because
you said, you're like, how do you love yourself when you hate yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Well, when you look at yourself in the mirror and you see like, you are lazy, you're not disciplined, and you point out the actual flaws. Like you actually get really, really raw and honest that like you are eating chips when you don't need them because you are not doing the work and, finding a healthy outlet and making excuses that, you've got kids and this happened to you and now you're a single dad and now you've worked a long day. You deserve to go to sleep and watch some TV before you, it's too cold to go out for a walk tonight. So you hate that part of you. So some input would be, oh, don't beat yourself up, and then another version would be like, no, beat yourself up because you're not going to change until you go get those walks in and stop making those excuses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean,
so I'm just thinking like the self-love, when it can be dangerous in a way where all you do is you journal. And it's, hey, I see value in being connected to yourself, and I see value in all this, but I also see value in like an element of, again, is it a healthy way to change?
Well, I think people confuse what self-love actually is, right? I mean, self-love is not soft. Self-love is not soft. Self-love is like, think about the love you have for your children in a lot of ways.
I see where you're going.
That's a very different type of love.
Okay.
Right? And you can be very tough with your kids because you're like, I love you so much and I know you don't want to do this, but because I care about you and because I love you, you're going to eat your vegetables or whatever it may be, So I think people confuse self-love with just being lenient and lazy and just allowing whatever you want. It's not soft at all. It actually is really difficult to often lean into it. And where you were talking about like the self-hatred, right? A big part of that, like, and I don't like to, that's a tough place to operate from because we're bringing it into the identity piece, right? And a lot of us, when we're operating from wounds, are operating from a place of I'm bad, there's something wrong with me, I'm not worthy. It's an identity, right? That's the trauma that creates the belief of when I get somewhere, then I will be worthy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we never get there because guess what? Our identity remains the same. Outward, we may have shifted things and we may feel better in moments, but that identity stays the same. So at the core, right, how do we heal that identity and that belief system that we are not inherently bad, broken, there's something wrong with us, and that's what the work has to do. And I actually think where self-love comes in is when that identity begins to shift. So when that identity begins to shift, I can have those tough conversations with myself. I can have those conversations about like, all right, I know that you don't want to get up and speak in front of all of these people and you're scared to death. But just be yourself.
I do like that.
The conversation shifts, but it also doesn't come from, I think too, the voice and how we talk to ourselves. We can be really mean. I can be tough with myself and I can get my ass up, but I also can do it in a very compassionate way versus before when there was a lot more wounds where my identity was rooted into unworthiness, broken, which so many of us operate from. I was mean to me.
Yeah, you were mean to you because, I deserve
You're
to be.
Stupid. You're not enough, the inner dialogue. And so we shame ourselves to success. We shame ourselves
it's very short-lived.
To being fit or healthy.
Shame, guilt. Yeah. And guilt is a dumb thing because you're judging yourself based on the decision you made in the past with knowledge that you didn't even have at the time. And then, shame is, I find, very, very short-lived. I mean, you can shame somebody. You can
motivate somebody through shame, but they won't stick with it.
Exactly. So like back to the healthy version of self-love, I think, knowing that your identity is rooted. I know, we haven't talked about our faith for a while either. So, but I know for me, I think a big thing for me was when, I went through my separation, and I was like literally at rock bottom. There was a night that I was like literally on my hands and knees crying out for God to show up and do something. And, it was a moment I'll never forget because there's been a few moments where I actually could feel Jesus in the room, not just in the room, but like literally right behind me. And I remember like literally crying out for him to do something. And that's when I realized like that he wasn't there to promise me an outcome, but he was there to promise me his presence. And that's when I realized that like he loved me for who I am, not for who I could be or not who I should be. And then when I recognize that as the standard of love, I'm like, if that is his standard of love, he doesn't love me based on what I do, what I could do. Like the love is unconditional. It's untransactional. And then that's when I realized this is the standard I need to love myself, because, for who he's called me as his son. And that's like, okay, I am his son. That is why I'm worthy. But then from there, because I know who I am and I recognize the source of all the goodness in my life, I want to now like pursue from a place of like, giving back. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Your
And, like,
identity is found in God.
Right. Yeah. And that was, I've heard that for 42 years. I mean, my dad was a pastor for 19 years. Like I heard that in Sunday school. I even had my own faith, but it never became real.
Yeah.
Didn't become real until I realized like that is actually where my identity is. And that's when I started to shift and realize I wanted to rebuild my foundation from my identity is intact. I don't have to worry about my identity. And I think for most men, it's hard because I find most men, we pursue two F's and two P's: fame and fortune, power and pleasure.
I thought the fourth P was going to be different.
You want to put it on? No. I'm so naive Vince here. I don't even know what you're thinking.
It's okay. Someone
Should I look it up on ChatGPT?
No, we'll keep going.
What was the fourth P, Rachel?
Someone's
you can tell me off.
I think you know.
Put it on camera. Oh gosh, I'm an idiot.
You got it.
I'm an idiot. Hey, we now see how innocent Vince is. Hey, I'm just back on the market, guys. I'm fresh.
Oh goodness.
All right, I got you. Well, hey, I did say pleasure. I said pleasure. I said the professional version of your version, which is pleasure. But pleasure could be food, it could be trips, it could be luxury. So, all right, get your head out of the gutter, guys. But I think those are false gods, and I think those things are very alluring. And it's not sexy to be the guy in the room when every dude's talking about the scale train they're on, and you're talking about how content you are with your life. But at the end of the day, I don't want that anymore. I don't want, I get it. If God wants to bless me with more and if he opens a door, I know that door can't be closed because he opened it and I'll walk through it. But I think the big takeaway for me has been to not make plans without God. And I think a lot of men, we get our passions and desires confused with God's will for our lives. And they become so powerful that you just we don't even question, hey guys, by the way, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this how I'm supposed to be doing it? And I think for me, the big pivot has just been to slow down. It's been to slow down and be okay with waiting. And it's been the hardest thing in my life, just to slow down, not operate from pressure, and be willing to wait. If this is meant to be, and I want God in the picture. And that way he can get the glory. And that way I can continue to build my trust and faith in this relationship that's way more powerful than what I could do on my own. So I think the hardest shift, for a lot of men, the idea of slowing down seems like, slow down? Like, what are you talking about? It doesn't mean you don't act. It doesn't mean I'm sitting there on my couch. I'm still acting, but at the same time, I'm consciously, Lord, if this isn't meant to be, like, give me a sign. I'm paying. What do you want me to see? I want to just stay as close as aligned with like what you have for me, not what I think is best for me.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid to lose their edge.
Right. Oh yeah, that was me. 100%.
I think it's not that they're unaware that they're operating from a wound. I think actually most of us are very aware that we're operating from an internal wound, but we actually like it. We view the wound as our edge, as our secret weapon. This is why I'm successful. Right. There's a benefit to my edge. And if I actually get rid of my edge, I'm not going to be successful. I'm not going to be able to create this. And I had that belief for a long time. And I think that's a place that a lot of men
totally don't
operate from.
Yeah.
And that's the lie. That is the lie. Is that if I get rid of my edge, that I'm not going to be able to create what it is that I want. Because I think though we'll operate from a different place. Right. Yes, freedom, success, it may look different. You're not going to, when you're operating from a different place, maybe not operating from that that wound or that quote unquote edge, you're not going to probably push yourself far beyond what your body can handle. You're not going to push yourself till burnout. You're not going to override your hunger. You're not going to, go through massive bouts of insomnia. You're not going to sacrifice your family and your relationships probably to do the same. But I think actually you'll begin to operate from inspiration. Inspiration is very powerful. And I love breaking down words, because if you break down inspiration in spirit, right? So you're connected to God.
I love it.
And you're creating from that place. And so with everything you also shared too, now you're operating from a place of serving God, or we can operate from a place where most of us operate from with our wounds, which is ego.
Right.
I forget who said it. It might have been Wayne Dyer, but ego, I just got out.
Yeah. I was literally going to say that. Edging greatness out.
So we're serving God or we're serving ego.
Yeah, so good.
And when we're serving God, we're operating from a place of inspiration in spirit. We can still create, but we're just creating from a different place. We're not creating from our ego. We're creating from our connection to the truth of who we are.
I love how we tied that all together. It was amazing.
And
we're going to be running an event, doing it at Rachel's house here. We're going to do a little segue. Or do you mind if I just do a little CT?
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking. Oh, you're serious? Okay, yeah, all right then. But okay, so
I don't know about this yet.
Okay, we're talking about self-love. Let's just talk about like defining. Let's talk about defining freedom. I think that's the next thing. So what freedom actually looks like beyond money and success, right? A lot of us, we chase freedom, but I find like we just keep creating new cages for ourselves.
Yeah.
All right. So what does freedom actually look like for you, business-wise, relationship-wise, and personally too? Like, what does freedom look like for you?
I think we're taught that freedom is something that's just external. And I see a lot of men operating from this place. So in the process, we'll sacrifice our freedom, also external freedom, but more than that, our internal freedom, in order to create a delayed version of what freedom could look like. And so for me, as I define freedom, it is not just about having the freedom of time. That is a form of freedom, to be able to do what I want, to be able to travel, yes. But more than that, for me, freedom is being internally free, not being controlled by things that are outside of myself. This would be my own connection to God. This would be not having to operate from my core wounds to be able to experience joy, fulfillment, peace in my life. Peace, you use that word, but peace has been huge for me. So it's more about being internally free, not operating from that place of friction internally. And for me now, that's my gauge. And I don't think that means that there's not ever pressure. I think pressure doesn't always necessarily mean a bad thing, but I think the lack thereof freedom and peace is very different. I can have pressure while still having internal freedom and peace simultaneously.
Edit that out. ChatGPT got excited there.
ChatGPT.
Just started recording what you were saying.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so no, that's good. It's like I like that. So a new thing that I came across is that a lot of entrepreneurs are what I've coined successful mimics. You just do what your mentor tells you to do. And you can get pretty far down the road. If you get a good coach, you get a good mentor, like you just do what they tell you, you can make millions, like just like that almost. But then you look back and you're like, what parts of that were, my inspiration, came from my creativity, came from my intuition. So I'm sure some of it did, right? I built my brand off of YouTube because I do like videos. Like just because he told me you should be on YouTube, it didn't mean I just got lucky on YouTube. I actually enjoyed making videos. And I think at some point, people have to realize that copying other people just is not a path to success. At some point, you have to step into your uniqueness. At some point, you're going to look at your credit card, and you've been in every single mastermind, in every single coaching program, which is 80% of the same information. And you realize that the people who are succeeding in the program have tapped into a unique voice, right? How did you, I know you talk a lot about this, stepping into your, like, and
Yeah.
what do you feel like the things you weren't, like, Alex Hormozy had a great quote the other day. I don't know if you heard him say it. I thought it was really, really profound. He said, you know, authenticity is when you, something to the effect of, authenticity is when you say what you want if there are no consequences. I really like that. Like, and the way I kind of heard that is like, you be the version of you that, like, there's no consequences if you all saw my, like, true self.
Yeah. And
So
I think you do a great job at that.
I do?
I think you do a great job at
thank
just
you.
being yourself.
I am, yeah.
You talk about your life, you talk about it's just Vince.
Everybody
You're
tells me not to, but I'm like, I don't know how not to.
Yeah. And so I think the anxiety and the fear that so many entrepreneurs actually face is this internal pressure that is coming from a place of trying to be perceived in a certain way. So they want to be perceived in a certain way.
Right.
They have people that they look up to. Nothing wrong with having people in the industry that you want to look up to and admire. Being inspired by somebody else is very different than wanting to be and mimic somebody else completely.
Yeah.
And in that, viewing who you are as not good enough or, you know, a lesser version of, so therefore you need to show up and imitate somebody else in order to try to achieve a similar level of success. And, you know, I think too, any level of success that you achieve from not being fully all of you will never actually fully feel like success. So let's just say you do grow the business. Let's say you grow the multi-million-dollar business. You'll get it, you'll have it, but it's not going to feel like yours.
It's interesting.
It's never going to feel like yours because it wasn't fully you and what you wanted to bring and pour out of you. I think the people that we really look up to in the space, when we see them and we know that they're not scripted, they're just talking from their heart. Like, we know those people when we just know inspiration is just moving through them. They're connected to something and you're like, oh my gosh, I get chills thinking about it because I know these people. And I also know when I'm speaking from that place, or maybe sometimes too, I can pick up on when I'm wanting to be perceived a certain way. And I'm not that person to say, I don't ever get nervous and then like think about what other people are thinking about me. It happens. And then I want to be perceived in a certain way. But I notice it creates a disconnect. It always is going to create a disconnect between you and your audience.
It's so true. Did I ever tell you the Bentley story? I didn't, with Bedros. This is pretty funny. So when my business was getting like to a peak, I went out and bought a Bentley. And I just was curious, what would happen if I started putting a nice car in all my content? Guess what? I got a lot of guys calling me, go, oh, dude, I love your car. And it was all these alpha dudes who want to get laid. I'm like, oh, putting nice cars in your videos attracts dudes who want external things and are externally driven. Crazy. I figured that out in the first week. I had like 5 dudes join my coaching program that I was like, you're joining my coaching program? I think every single one of them mentioned the Bentley. I'm like, okay, interesting. So I got the Bentley, and I even went into this like kind of phase where I tried to be the alpha dude, and like, everything I was angry all the time. I remember a guy asked me, why are you always angry? Like, and I'm like, I'm not an angry guy. I'm like, I'm sure a really chill guy. And I realized like Bentleys and anger were attracting people into the coaching program, but they weren't dudes I even like really connected with. So I'd learned that the hard way. And I told Bedros this story in his office. He goes, yeah, Vince, I could have told you that. Less Bentleys, more babies. And I was like,
I don't know nothing about cars, so I would not know that.
Well, you got a nice car.
Yeah, I still don't know much about it. I just looked at it and was like, I like the way that looks.
But but what I'm saying, if you flash your car, and I don't think you ever do. I think you rarely. You do a good job at like
small little snippets.
Yeah. But if that was like the focal point of everything you did, you probably attract a different type of person that's more externally driven. But that's not you. That would be inauthentic, is what you're saying. So like, I think it is very important, not just if you can make money, but how you make money. To me, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Like how you make it.
And I think so much of this comes into the content that we create too. And I think part of the healing journey is we all have a perceived version of ourselves, right? I mean, I would not wake up and just be Rachel pajamas, nothing, and then get on like a speaking or podcast or thing like that. But I think it is that like the people who are truly successful in the space that can really speak and resonate with so many people, their portrayed self and their authentic self has come closer together in what they're presenting. We have this fear of who we are won't be liked. So we try to portray ourselves
no,
in a certain way on how we think we should be liked. Yes. And then we're not showing up authentically. Yeah. People can feel that. Yes. And it doesn't actually create the result that we want. And then it reiterates over, see how I am and how I'm showing up. Yeah. I shouldn't just do this. And we're actually creating the very thing that we're afraid of.
That's interesting. Like I was joking around, like if you hear my voice when I was coming up, I was a mixture of Bedros Keuilian, Grant Cardone, and Stephen Furtick. And I was just because I listen to those guys all the time. But like I had to, and it helped me kind of find my voice, but then I had to kind of filter out the stuff that was like, yeah. And I think, this is a part of the healing though. Like I don't think you can figure out your uniqueness if you don't spend time getting to know yourself. And that requires
that right there,
right?
Yes.
You have, like, when I went through this process, like one of the craziest things is when the separation happened, I was like, I had no interest in making money. Money seemed like such a stupid thing. When my whole life was built around like success, money, and fame, those three things, I'm like, these are the dumbest things in the world. Like, why do people even care about them? Like, relationships are the only thing that matters.
Yeah. But that's also coming from someone who's created that versus somebody who's never had that. Right. Very different.
Yes, exactly. So in that process, is it process or process?
I say process, but I think in Canada they say process.
It's a bit of both. All right. So in the process, I was able to like start to think of like, who am I? Who am I? And what is kind of like manufactured from somebody else? And how do I just start stripping away and be the person that I've always been, right? And the person I've always been has always been like a level of vulnerability, real, raw, and like compassionate, but also there is an edge there. So, but it was embracing it in my way. You know, I don't drop the F-bomb every other word. Every once in a while, it doesn't bother me, but like I had to just step into like who I am and start to see, well, people like me because there is a transparency and authenticity that is just true. Yeah. People, I think, are just drawn to that.
I think that is why so many people are drawn to you, because there is this level of safety that is created around somebody who's not trying to just show off or trying to be portrayed in a certain way. It's like, oh, I feel actually safe to be me. Well, simultaneously.
You know how it really happened is like when God's provide, like I thought I was gonna. I've never even said this probably out loud, but like I thought I was gonna lose my business. Like I didn't even want to work. I didn't even like show up. Like 75% of the time I was doing coaching calls, but like I had no ambition. Like I wanted to lie in bed, and I'm like, how is this happening to me? I was like a 3:55 a.m. guy. I would jump out of bed like every minute of the day scripted, and all of a sudden none of that even mattered. And then when I realized like God provided through all of this, He's present.
That was such a pivotal point for you though, of redefining what success looked like.
Right. It had to happen. And I had to just redefine everything. Redefine my philosophy, my perspective. I had to ask myself, are these actually my views, or are these serving me? Is this what I even want? Right? It's a scary question to ask. What do I want? And what I did realize what I wanted was I want to actually be in a connected relationship. I like that. And I think success was actually preventing me from like saying, I don't need to be in a connected relationship. Look how successful I am. Why do I need this? Why do I need this when I have this? Look how where I got on my own. And it prevented me from getting what I actually wanted. And I actually believe that every single person, what they truly want most is to be in an intimate, connected, safe, supportive, loving relationship. And a lot of this other stuff is just, it blocks us from getting what we ultimately want because our identity would be threatened. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how when you start to actually just embody like fully all of you, things just start to work out that much better. Like your business, people feeling safe, people attracted to you who are supposed to be attracted into your business or life, right? Relationship could be the same thing. Just things start to work out, and it's pretty incredible because it's like, why didn't I do this before?
Yes.
Almost, but
And to ask you about surrender, and then I have I think one or two more topics, but just talking about surrender, like, so how did you manage like letting go of control, and like, what does that look like? What does that feel like, practically? When you went away on your 40 days to Europe, obviously, there was an element of letting go. You're in a different time zone. It's probably harder to communicate with the team. You're not like creating the same type of content maybe that's driving acquisition maybe, but like what was that like, and how would you navigate somebody who's like, I am a control freak, I'm not letting go of the steering wheel?
yeah. If I were to feel more so how control feels internally, I think of it as like a grasping. It's like this contraction, it's this constriction, right? And so I think often when we think of letting go of control, that means that we release discipline, we release trying to create something in our life. And I actually would argue that that doesn't mean that at all. I think it's more an internal game. Right? I can still have goals, ambitions that I work towards. There's still a level of me creating the life that I want for myself. I'll take action. But also, I can release the things and trying to internally grasp and hold on for things that are no longer meant to be in my life.
Got it.
That don't need to be there. And so it's more of this internal game of control that I think is really what has control over us, that's creating so much of that lack of peace and that lack of freedom.
And power is like a renewable. Someone asked me, do you know the difference? I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't know. What is the difference between working from force and power? But power is like a renewable energy and is coming from internal. And force is like external effort. I think it is operating more from a place of like that internal, that rechargeable battery, if you will. That is who you are. That's always going to be there, rather than trying to make something happen that's not who you are, or that's not meant to be.
Yeah, I think people confuse surrender with the lack of assertion of will. So there still is assertion of will, but there is just not a holding on to something that is not meant
There's
to
a
be.
detachment
There's a
as well.
detachment
There's a
in it,
detachment. It's like, hey, I'm going to go for this, but like if I don't get it, like that's what I had to do with Tennessee. Like I've had to surrender it. Like I honestly feel like that's where I'm supposed to be. But like I've had to let go. And if I have to stay in Toronto, I'm like, God, you know where's best for me. And I think what's best for me is there. But like, how do I know that? I've already messed this up so many times. So I'm surrendering where I'm living, and I trust that He's not going to give me second best.
Yeah. I think it's creating the intention, knowing what it is that we're trying to create, taking action, but then not trying to hold on and grasp to try to force something that maybe isn't aligned at that point in time, right? I think romance, intimate relationships is a prime example of this. So often where we want to control another person, we want them to show up in a certain way so we can feel a certain way.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a relationship has reached its point where it's no longer serving us. It doesn't mean it wasn't a beautiful relationship. It served its purpose.
Right.
But now we're trying to hold on to it longer than it was meant to be.
Right.
And I think it's in this holding on that actually we create the problems that actually exist.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
We do. I'm sure you could do it. We could do a podcast on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Last two things. I want to just talk about investing into yourself and like not beating yourself up. So actually, let's talk about the beating yourself up, because that was kind of closer to what we were just talking about. So in this process, how did you just start to like, you were talking earlier about like you were really mean to yourself. I'm trying to think. I think I've been mean to myself in some really weird ways. Like I don't believe I can change. So like, or hey, I was shredded like 5 years ago when I had 2 kids and not 3 kids, and when I was all these excuses, all these stories, and so I just eat the chips. No big deal. I'll have another bag too. It's no big deal. It's almost like a form of like punishing yourself. How did you start to like step out of like doing self-destructive or self-sabotaging behaviors? I always believe it's just a choice. At the end of the day, I think we overcomplicate or overanalyze things. But like, what was your process of not beating yourself up?
Yeah. First, I had to become aware of the moments of where I actually was um, being mean to myself, or
Okay.
maybe where there was some inner dialogue of like, oh, you're so stupid or whatever. Yeah, we all have that inner dialogue that
Right.
we've operated from at some point in our life. My inner dialogue doesn't operate from that anymore. It's actually really kind, very, very compassionate, but it took me to be able to become very aware of that and being able to actually pause and take notice of where those conversations were happening, and then really being able to do a deep dive of what is really the belief that I have about myself. Is this true? Is this coming from? And this may sound hard, like in the moment to do. So I love journaling. It's a way that I've really processed through a lot of when these wounds are coming up, and that's what's happening in the moment of these are surfacing. You could call them triggers, and where I can do a lot of deep introspection. And usually this is where a wounded version of ourselves is showing up. And then I'm able to hold that. And you could almost call it a type of self-parenting. And I can meet myself in the place where my higher self can meet this. We could almost say lower version of ourselves. Some people may say like the wounded inner child, whatever, we could go really into like that wooey world and all of that. But then I'm able to meet myself like I would meet my daughter. Right. So we talked earlier about like that love. How would I show up for myself? How would I love myself? What would I want for my daughter? How would I talk to her right now? And most of it, when we can start treating ourselves like how we would treat our child, like what kind of compassion would you show your child?
Right.
You'd probably still hold them to the things that they need to do and get done out of a place of love. And that's our higher self coming in. That's, you could say, the parent self to the wounded inner child. Some people just say capital S self versus lower S self, in that inner dialogue. But it's being able to come and detach from, we're operating from this lower place, and I need to meet myself from this higher place, and then choose to shift the dialogue to here.
Yeah.
And so I think just repeatedly doing that in moments over and over again is what has slowly shifted that. And now the internal dialogue has become more of this compassionate, caring parent, but is still going to hold me to the things that are good for me and the things that I know I need to do. Because I love myself too much not to.
Have you, the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer?
I think so.
The 4 sentences?
What is it?
When you put your hand on your, basically connecting with your inner child. Like, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I love you.
I forgive you, that one?
Yeah.
The Ho'oponopono?
Yeah, Ho'oponopono.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I love you.
I forgive you. Will you forgive me? Yeah.
Yeah. Will you forgive me? Yeah. Will you forgive me? Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went through that. I was like, someone had me do it. They're like, you got to do it all the time. And I'm like, this freaking crap works.
Yeah.
But it was, I actually could, it was a process of me actually talking to my younger self. It was crazy. Yeah. And yeah, because that's a whole nother, conversation, but like, it was really, really comforting. Like, hey, got you, bro. I'm right here. Like, I'm not going anywhere.
Hey, got you.
I'm right here. And it
What
was
do you
like
need
that
right now?
higher conscious, like stepping out of your body and like talking to the little guy. Like, hey, I'm right here, man. I'm not going anywhere. Let's work through this. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'm not going anywhere. Let's work on this. We're winners. We've gone through this before. We're going to get through this again. And it's just like, don't let the little guy like take over. It's like big Vince takes care of little Vincey.
And that's actually showing up for yourself in like a very grounded, masculine place.
Right.
Instead of from this wounded place that oftentimes is what we're shifting into in those moments.
Oh yeah. I mean, you turn into adult temper tantrums, and I'm like, whoa. I'm freaking 45. I should not be acting like this. This is how my son acts when he doesn't get his way. But like, most of us don't do that inner work, which is what we've been talking about, which is the whole purpose of this episode, is like healing, and to show up better for everyone around you. So this kind of might not sound related to, like, my last question here is just, related to entrepreneurship, healing, but I think it does. How has investing into yourself played a role of like healing and growing your business? I find like right now people see it as almost a one-time event. And it's not like, I know like you've invested even in a place where like you were in debt, right? And you had nothing. And
Yeah, my initial first investment that I made was $50,000, where I had $60,000 in debt, and I actually only had $25,000 in my bank account.
How did you get that 50K? How did you get the money?
Oh, you don't know the story?
Oh,
You want
sure.
to hear how real God is?
Okay.
When we take action, I think, in full trust and belief.
Yeah.
And this is where God just showed me that this was the direction I was supposed to go on. But also I had to take the action first. Right. So this was COVID, everything shut down. I had, at the time I was making $6,000 a month, but actually I was making nothing, COVID. And $60,000 of student loan debt. I just walked away from a 5.5-year relationship. I was living in a $1,200 kind of shitty apartment in uptown Dallas. And this is where I got on a call with this potential business coach, having no idea how much it would cost, having no relative amount of really money at the time because I made so little. To me, $6,000 actually felt like a lot, believe it or not.
Well, it is a lot, yeah. It is a lot, yeah.
Yeah. And so he gets on the phone and he tells me it's $50,000 to work with him. Right. I have no money coming in, and I had saved $25,000, and I thought I was like, oh, I'd saved this much. That was my life savings, even though I had debt and I had yet to start paying it off yet. But I had this inner knowing and this belief of like, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And it wasn't me so much betting on him, but was more about me betting on me. I was betting on me so much in that moment. And I had this belief of, I know if I do the work, I can create what it is that I want. I actually had no fear in that moment. I think there's other decisions I've made in my life where I had hints of fear. What if, that? But actually, this was one of the moments in my life where I was like, I have to do this. It's going to work. I'm betting on me. And so I asked if I could do a payment plan. And the payment plan I was given was $25,000 down today, and then $25,000 down 30 days later. And so I made the move to put $25,000 down. I emptied my bank account in the middle of COVID, no money coming in. And I didn't even know. So I put the money down before I even knew, for one, how I was going to get the other $25,000. So I made the decision with just a belief in knowing I was going to find it.
You committed first.
I committed first. So I think most people would say, well, let me see, let me reach out to the bank, let me do all this stuff, let me see if I can get it. I was like, I'm in, 25,000 and 30 days to figure out COVID. I got the COVID relief fund I had applied for, and they said it was for $25,000.
Oh, wow.
I got it for exactly $25,000.
Amazing.
A couple weeks after, I had wired over that 25, and I sent over that other $25,000.
That's awesome. That's so good. I love it.
But I don't think that would have happened if I wouldn't have made the decision. I truly don't. And it was that year I made my first $1 million off of that decision.
That's amazing.
But it took me fully betting on me.
Yeah. I love it.
Like, you can't make that story
it's incredible. It's a beautiful story.
And I never had to repay the $25,000. I don't think, because I think it was, I was forgiven.
That's why you guys are trillions of dollars in debt over here in the U.S. Well, we're in bad shape in Canada too, so I can't say anything.
That story has so much to it, and I've shared it when I've spoke on stage because
that's incredible. That's incredible.
Most people, and this is not just to like build myself up or anything, but I think most people would never be willing to make a decision like that, to have no income, to be in the middle of a pandemic, to be all on their own as a single woman that had just stepped out of a relationship, and to already be in debt, and to go that much in. And I think also that's why I am where I'm at now.
Yeah, what you just painted a picture of was a specific perception of the situation, but you had a different perspective. Your perspective was, what if this does work? And a lot of people would use all those reasons, but you only need one reason to go all in on yourself, and that's enough.
And I've said this to other people before. I will bet on myself every single day.
Yeah.
Like if it's just about me, and this is kind of too where it's led to burnout in ways. So there's always two sides to every coin, right? So there's the positive and there's the negative. I don't believe in it's all bad or all good. I think in different situations, things can serve us. In other situations, it can, it can be our shadow and it can hurt us in a lot of ways. But I will say, For me, discipline, I know I have the work ethic. I know I can work hard. So for me to say, all right, all I got to do is work hard and just me bet on me, I'll bet on that any single day. And so I was betting on me, not anybody else. And I created that. Now I continue to lean into that, which is a strength. And I think here's going back to the last conversation. Discipline's a God-given gift. It's actually from God. But when it's used for the ego's purpose instead of God's purpose, so right, is it good or is it bad? No, discipline's a God-given gift for me.
Love it.
But what is it being used by?
Yeah. I love it. You know the definition of discipline? You know the definition of discipline?
What?
Craig Rochelle says this, so he's likely not watching this, so I didn't need to give him credit. Could have looked really good right now, but it's okay. It's deciding between what you want now and what you want most. It's good.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm sure somebody else has said it, but
I've heard decide, which means to kill off
oh yeah, that's good. Yeah.
any other option.
Yeah. Decide.
Absolutely.
To kill off any other option. Yeah. Decision is that's really good. Rachel, I'm sure we could talk for a while. Yeah. Any final words or anything you want to share? But I felt like talked a lot. Appreciate your openness as well, your transparency. I love the journey you're on.
Yeah. And I'm really glad we talked about entrepreneurship and also the healing side of it all,
Right.
because I don't think it's talked about enough that entrepreneurship at the core is an internal game as
Right.
it is an external game.
Yes.
And this really is an internal game to create whatever definition you want of success. It's always going to be that internal part. And so that's the greatest work that we can do on ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel, where can people learn more about you?
Yeah. Instagram, Rachel Scheer, and website, rachelsheer.com.
All right. Well, guys, hope you enjoyed the episode. Love to know what your biggest takeaways were. Let us know below or hit us up on Instagram. Tag us both and share this. Pay it forward. Let somebody tune into the conversation you just tuned into. If you listen this long, I'm sure you got some value from it. So grateful for you tuning in. Grateful for you, and all the amazing stuff you're doing, and for your letting me in this amazing house, which is so inspiring.
Covered in dog hair.
Yeah, me too. All right. We'll see you next time. Ciao, ciao.